Hello and welcome to the Community Meta. I'm Morg and I'm joined by MightyBlueJustice. And today we're going to talk about monetization of communities. So that's taking the sweet money from community members' pockets to fund all different aspects of what the community needs, from server hosting to licensing.
That's right. So what sort of things would you spend money on that are beneficial to a community? Or what things have you bought for a community in the past?
Well, I think most gaming communities have purchased a server or some sort of what's it called? TeamSpeak licensing.
Yeah. So TeamSpeak back in the day, you'd used to have to get a TeamSpeak license, but then sometimes you might still have to host the actual server yourself. And the servers would be licensed for a certain number of users. It's not too dissimilar to how Slack does it, except TeamSpeak's got voice chat.
Yeah. And depending how built up your community is, you may have a website where you're pushing people to do transactions like donating money to that specific community for, the goodness of your heart, or generally some benefits that they're linking with that donation.
Yeah, or the irony, it's like, let's send people to our website so they can make donations to pay for the website. But the other stuff that can happen as well is you might have a VPS that you can use to host a open source program such as Mumble. So actually quite often you can get just a server hosted offsite, and you might pay a hosting company to set up a Mumble server on that one for you. The other option as well that you see is some people just use Amazon Web Services just to give themselves a virtual private server. That it's basically like having a computer in your house, except it's in the cloud. And when it's in the cloud, it's just someone else's computer. And that could be one that you just remote in. And the advantages there, of course, is that your offsite server is hosted, it's not beholden to anyone's local power or internet going out or anything like that. Those things are the big deal, is that they're reliable, and so that's the sort of benefit that you get. And so then that way you might have a voice communication server and a website that are always up. The other advantage as well is that quite often people's internet plans don't always allow for you to host a server on your own home network, or it might be difficult to do so because a lot of the times you don't get a static IP, and that can be a bit tricky when you're trying to host a server. So if you want to host like a Minecraft server or a server for a game, your regular internet that you would get sometimes isn't sufficient on that technical side of things. You might still be able to kind of do it, but it would be more fiddly than if you just had something hosted offsite. And the other side effect is that sometimes it's just cheaper. Like I was telling a friend who was talking about getting trying to set up a dedicated server for Valheim, just having it run on a computer in his house. And I was like, look, you'll be paying more on the electricity to keep that on than you would if you just rent a Valheim server for your mates for however long you guys are going to be on a kick for the server. And then that sort of turns into it, like everyone chip in, we can have a server, we can make our own rules and have our own time. It's like that with a good example. We talked about it a bit from a different angle, but the offline TV servers, when they did Rust, for example, you can actually customize the experience and be more specific about how you want everybody to play. It's not just like a matchmaking or a Wild West of the internet out there, especially if you whitelist the servers.
So like you and your mates just grabbing, hey, we're going to make our own server with hookers and blackjack.
That's right. That's a GTA server, right? The GTA RP servers all over the place.
But yeah, generally by getting a virtual private server, it's a lot cheaper due to the fact that you're actually generally sharing that server with someone else, and that's how you reduce costs. So, for example, you could have a server that's running your website and it'll cost you only $5 a month if you're getting the lowest tier from most server hosting companies. Compare that to a dedicated server, which is a lot more expensive to have a dedicated piece of hardware that's going to be running your community, your website, XYZ, which generally is not needed.
Yeah, it depends on how much overkill you want versus how much you actually need as well. And plus, on top of that, with all the dedicated servers and things like that, you still do have like stuff has generally moved to platform-based stuff. So like your Facebook, your Twitch, your Reddits, all those sort of things where communities gather on these like platform-style websites more so than they are hosting their own website, hosting their own voice chat, hosting their own thing. So it's a bit more like you happen to be on the platform, so you'll stumble across it, versus quite often in the older days, if there was a group that you wanted to get involved with, you had to seek them, you had to find them on the internet. If they didn't have any sort of if they didn't have any like search optimization going on, you'd never find them if you were just casually looking for them. Like you might go, oh, I want a Arma 2 community. You'll get heaps, and you might get really good ones that are smaller that haven't taken that sort of stuff into account, and they'll be harder to find because they're on any of the network websites where it would be easier to find them.
A good example of this would be if you're looking for a Minecraft server. I think 99% of people are going to hop on Minecraft forums and just scroll through the literal trove of advertisements for people to come apply and join their whitelist or public server. Generally, it was a whitelist application, though, for the more qualitative servers out there.
Not like 2BT. So some of the other options, so that's what you would, in theory, this is what you would spend money that you would generate from a community upon. Some communities will go so far as to try to pay their moderators, depending on how big and busy some of those communities are. And in quite a lot of cases nowadays, people will be able to, they might not necessarily monetize the community itself, but the community allows them to make content that then moves on to onto like a YouTube platform or Twitch, which then allows that person to be able to pay for themselves, but it also serves as a certain kind of it's like a low-key advertising for the community if it comes up good. If you make a good video and people look at it and go, oh, that's a fun bunch of people, I want to play video games with them. It serves as a bit of advertising as well. And that can work without having to specifically monetize the community itself, if that makes sense. Which is kind of the big question a lot of the time. Like once money becomes involved, it has got the potential to change things. We sort of talked in the past about these gaming communities are fairly similar to like a volunteer organization. And as soon as money gets involved with that sort of stuff, it does change it, because it goes from passion to it starts from passion, but it can also bring in a certain element of there's like a professional aspect, so to speak, or like an opportunity for a profession, I should say. And depending on the size of the communities and how they organize themselves, different people might have different opinions on where all the money should go. So being able to do something that can monetize the community without directly taking money from the people in the community, I think is one of those things, like what can you do?
Yeah, back in my Minecraft days, I saw a lot of people getting extremely funny about if they donated to the server and then knew that the admin had used some of that money for non-community related funds, which
like food.
Yeah. Which I see where they're coming from, but I also could see why the admin who could have put countless hours of administration in also felt the need that they wanted a tiny bit of the cut of the donation as well.
Yeah, and it's one of those strange things too, where like how much is excess, and then what happens to the excess, if that makes sense. Because eventually a lot of basic stuff, unless you have enormous amounts of traffic, a lot of like once you've got website and a voice server and stuff like that sort of sorted, I mean, it's, it doesn't really need that much. And that being said, though, I think the ratio of people who donate to people who don't is also extremely. It can be skewed. It really depends. Different communities will have different levels of engagement. But I see what you mean. You've got that sort of like, I put this money in, where is my sort of like ownership, if that makes sense? And then you get weird things too, like it's a whitelisted server with a donation, but what if you made a donation, but then you also started griefing,
Yeah.
or like started picking fights? Like that makes it really awkward for the admins. Like, hey, this guy has, just started dropping some pretty choice insults. But they also donated to the server. What do we do?
Yeah, and
it's one of those.
They donated $100 yesterday. Are we going to refund that because we're banning him, or
Yeah, exactly. Or like, and then it's like, how long? Like, oh, he donated $100 8 months ago. Like, do we refund him $20? Like, does anyone even remember that much money that long ago? Sometimes, like, it can really, different people, different lives. It can get kind of strange. So there are a couple of different ways that some platforms are starting to bring in to help monetize communities directly for the people who administrate them. I think Facebook's got some measure of that. You can make donations to things. YouTube's got its join button. Twitch has got subscriptions. Gilded actually lets you subscribe to a server, and a certain amount of that money goes to the server operators, as well as opposed to sort of like your Discord, where you have Discord Nitro, where it just sort of the money just disappears and you get emojis.
I do know Discord is working on a feature where you can pay money directly to that specific server, which then will come with benefits of what the server owner chooses to.
Yeah. The danger there, I guess, is that anytime there's a platform involved processing the money on the behalf, like quite often the platforms will try to take an enormous cut. Like sometimes it's 50%, sometimes it's like 60, 75%. I think YouTube's cut of super chats is really high. And at some point, it's just like, if you want to make damn sure that you're supporting them, the best thing is a direct PayPal donation, that's. But then again, some people prefer different platforms, or like Twitch has got bits, for example, which are a really nice way of offsetting like the liability from chargebacks, for example, because the money would be then charged back to Twitch itself, not the streamer. Quite often you'll see people make like large donations to streamers and then do a chargeback, which, because PayPal will refund the money, but they won't refund the fees. And so a large donation comes with a large fee. So suddenly they can just by committing fraud, you can put someone else several $1,000s down the hole, So there are a lot of platforms that are available for it as well, but I think it is sometimes worth considering exactly what the best way to do it is. Because if your mate just opens up his wallet and gives you $5, you got $5. But if he donates to your Twitch stream, you get $2.50. Like,
yeah, I think a lot of people, it's streamers or YouTubers, in their description or their about page will just have a direct PayPal link. And a small comment of, if you want to support me directly, please donate here.
Yeah, so that's something that we're talking about with regards to like streaming and content communities, where it's sort of the thing that you're paying for is you're either paying for like, oh, I enjoyed that, I will pay you for it, thank you, or it's sort of like a future proofing, like I like what this person's doing, I want to see more of it in the world, and in contributing to that, you are then making it so that they don't have to worry about eating or having shelter, and then they can focus more on creating more of the content that you enjoy, which is great.
With game specific communities, I think we'll touch you more on like Twitch and YouTube in that aspect. So those come with some intricacies about how you could use that money, or more specifically, Twitch or YouTube's going to take that cut. Where on the game size, you also have to be careful of what sort of terms and conditions of monetizing your community for that specific game come with.
Yep.
So for
Are we
example,
referring here to like a community server that exists that takes donations, for example?
Yeah, so for example, a Minecraft server that's running donations. In the Minecraft EULA, there is a section where you aren't allowed to essentially put a pay-to-win functionality in. So if the server has a leaderboard or the server has a competitive aspect, that donation can't come with benefits that's going to allow the player to perform better than another player on that server.
What if the server has a leaderboard of donators? It's like you pay to win nothing, kind of like. It's interesting that that's in the. It's really interesting that that's in the EULA though. There were ones where there were some like custom games, for example, that were made on Dota or like your StarCraft map editor ones. And some of those had pay-to-win elements as well. Like, oh, you chipped in a bit, so you get an extra perk at the beginning of the round or something like that. Like, blatantly pay-to-win in mods sort of thing, which is wild. Wild a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's why it's super important if you're running a game community to actually go in and read the EULA. I know most people are just clicking accept and not being quite sure what they're accepting to. But if you're running a game community, that's when it's super important to know what you can and can't do from a legal standpoint. Or you might open yourself up. Yep.
Yeah, and it's the same for like Discord as well. They've got terms of services and things like that. As a community leader, you can't. You run the risk of losing the whole community if you don't keep up with that sort of stuff, because you might suddenly find that either they change the rules or there was a rule that you never thought about that apparently that has always been there, that can actually lead to, like Discord's pretty notorious where they'll delete entire servers, and if you just happen to be in the server, you get banned. You might not have been a bad actor within the server or ever. But just by being there when it got banned,
it's bystander.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They really scorched the earth, and so, but it's also you also get some strangeness with the other sort of like your gaming communities, like your Hell Let Loose, your squads and stuff like that, where they will be supporting a server, and servers are very central in those sort of games to the experience because they don't have like your AWS spin up, spin down sort of servers. They just if a community is not running a server, there's a chance that there might not be a server in your region. And so some of those ones will kind of monetize their community. They'll take donations from people. And what they can do is sometimes they'll add it so that the server has priority slots, so that if you want to join, you get first dibs in getting in, basically, to make sure that, hey, you're a person who donated to the server. You're in. Some people might, and like that's a strange one too, because it's the difference between, well, what's the difference between just having a server that's password protected versus an open server that does that? Then it's sort of like, oh well, are the people who aren't directly donating just, chaff? Yeah. Like it certainly would. I think it can depend on them as well. Some servers in the past for like Counter-Strike and things like that, they used to just kick people to make room for you. And I think others implement a queue to make sure that you are like the very next person in, which next chance you get.
By just kicking people, it's just one sure way to piss people off.
Yeah, I think it is, but only in the sense of like if the server community in general is kind of small. Like if it's a niche game, that would be kind of a dick move. Like if you're sort of hostile to outsiders, if that makes sense, or that would be like you're describing. But something like Counter-Strike, where you used to be able to get like hundreds of servers to choose from wherever you go, getting kicked from one server, it's not necessarily a winner. You
may anger the team though if you're last alive in a clutch situation.
Yeah, and then you get kicked because some other guy joins in, right? Like that would suck. How do you handle? So that's one sort of way that monetization is it does directly benefit the community as a whole, because the server gets to keep existing, assuming that the money that comes in goes back into paying for the server fees, and then it sort of comes back to what happens to the extra money. Some places they might just buy like Steam gift cards to giveaways as a result. Others might use it to try to compensate moderators for their time, because it is a job, and others might just sort of have a cap. They're like, okay, we need this much money to keep the server going for 6 months. Once we hit it, that's done. And some might also just use actual merchandise as well. They'll just make t-shirts or something like that, and those sales from those will then go towards whatever the community needs as a result.
Which then that will, if they play smartly, will also increase that fund pool that they had. Because you can sell the t-shirts for, say, a $4 profit. So every t-shirt you sell, you're increasing your available funds $4 down the track.
That's true. And I think that's arguably that's one of the more like ethical ways to go about it, because it does sort of feel weird adding social constructs around the money, like reserve server slots and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you host a server, it's your server. Like other people can come and go, but it is worth. I think it is definitely worth. You don't do it because you don't like people.
Yeah. You're doing it because you love the game and you wanna
exactly
have a qualitative experience that you have a say over.
Exactly. It's something to give you more control over, just like a random matchmaking thing. You can actually have a space that's for you and your community. So other things that groups will do is sometimes they might just have specific donor roles, like your shout outs and things like that. I think that's a little bit more on like the Twitch Discord sort of side of things. Like you go, oh, hey, you donated, you get the fancy role, you get the shout out in the credits or the little ad commercials or what have you. You get the badge next to your name in chat. And
or in a
those
game.
are handy as well.
You can get
in a game, exactly.
Like donor tag, or Minecraft, you can
founders,
have the rainbow. You'll have a rainbow color name whatever name you want.
Yeah. And is that just for when you rent a realm?
No. So if you're a donator, that's just like an added bucket plugin that you will. Okay. Is it still bucket?
Is that like
It may be.
Is that like a donator to a server, or is that like you make a donation to Minecraft in general after you've already bought Minecraft?
You make a donation to the community server, and then the admin will give you access to that perm to use.
Yeah. So I think that quite often it's very easy to sort of want to have the career in computer games or community management. You get the stars in your eyes. And you sort of go, all right, it's time to monetize the community. When is the right time to monetize a community? And I think it can really depend on what the community needs, as well as assuming your own as a community manager. So one of the ones that I think is a really dangerous explanation is Twitch's affiliate program. So it is very easy to become an affiliate on Twitch, and part of that agreement is that you only stream on Twitch, and it does unlock the monetization features on Twitch for you, but their requirements for you to get that are so astronomically low that you won't be able to sort of get any real monetization aside from like if you get just a random chance person come through. So if you the smallest that you need is like 3 concurrent viewers over a month. And 3 people is not a lot of people to take money from. And so it's not going to give you like an ongoing thing if you monetize straight away. If you wait until you start getting, more than 3 people, but also people actually asking like, hey, how can I support you? Or how can I do this donation? Like I've had people try to just guess my Streamlabs URL and make donations to me on Streamlabs, so I had to go to Streamlabs to claim the URL, sort of thing, which was very.
They're going to lengths there.
Exactly, and it was really nice of them to do that. But it was sort of, and I think that's part of the. I suppose it's the other side of it too. You don't want to appear like you're greedy if you don't have a huge audience and you have all your stuff listed, like, oh, here's how you can support the channel, and sometimes it can look a bit awkward if you have a channel that's got very like a very new channel that's got all that set up. But I guess if you are taking it seriously, it is worth having it set up, because you don't know when people will want it. You really don't. So it could be good. And so I haven't mentioned the other two platforms that are available for this sort of stuff, which is your Patreon and Coffee. So they're both kind of similar to each other in a sense. Coffee's got a bit more of a broader set of features, but Patreon's a lot more standard, so to speak. But I think your Patreon sort of is a little bit more like you have to be creating a thing that you can put out there.
I have a great non-gaming example for Patreon, actually.
Lay it on us.
So there's this guy who does hiking videos in Western Australia, and sort of Instagram stories about him hiking. He actually has made for his Patreon users a map of all his favorite hikes all across the state. So so if you want to find out great places to hike and you don't want to troll through the countless ones that are listed online, he's got a map that you click on, and there's the hikes planned out on the map, and you can find out, what he took and all that for that specific hike, and some information about it.
And that's a great way to sort of use that for, like, you're giving a little something for people who give you that sort of financial support, which does sort of bring up the discussion occasionally where you have the use of the word donation, because some people will have quite a few arguments as to whether or not it can like a donation versus is it a tip versus is it a donation. I'm pretty sure that nothing that you would give here is tax deductible, unless you get your gaming organization registered as a charity. Different process, different rabbit hole. But that's kind of the trick there, right? Like, so is it a donation or is it a tip? Like, donation kind of implies that you're giving it so that something can be put up, which might be appropriate to sort of keeping a server running or something along those lines. But if it's also going into like supporting people financially so that they can have the time to work on it, it does generally get people will argue that that's much more of like a tipping sort of situation, or like a supporter sort of thing. And I think that's kind of where a lot of places will try to be able to give you like something for your extra money, if that makes sense. So like your added benefits, like we were talking about, like your t-shirts, priority slots on servers, special roles.
At the point when it's a donation, in my eyes, you're donating for nothing in return. That's what a donation is. You're giving money, you're not receiving anything back.
Yeah, it's like when the street performer puts the hat round at the end of his show, right? He swallowed the swords, he set fire to the bagpipes, he stopped walking. So, to see it, chuck a couple of bucks in the hat and, good, he made your day a bit better.
But, a lot of game servers will sell benefits, roles, etc., under the guise of you're donating, but in reality you're actually purchasing a product for that particular server, be it the server reserve slots, or the wacky fancy name in the server.
Yeah. You get the extra. You get the special font.
So at that point, it's not a donation because you're purchasing those specific benefits.
Yeah, especially if that was the thing that incentivized you to put the money in as well. You went, oh, I want to spend this so that I get this extra special thing from the server. Not, oh, I really had fun on the server. I like what they're doing. I want to chip them a couple of bucks so they can keep doing it, and I don't want anything in return.
And that's the thing. There'll be two different types of people right there and then. I know a lot of people in the past that have donated to communities I've been in weren't actually after the benefits. They just wanted to keep seeing the server carry on.
Yeah. And that's sort of good for a certain amount of time, but you can also have the ones where, like we were talking earlier, like money changes things. Like what happens when someone makes a bit of a donation and then everything goes sour and then it's like, oh. Do they want it all back? Do we give any of it back? Like,
Can they
was
afford
it a
to give it to me back?
donation? Yeah, like, was it a donation or is it a refund now? Because refund implies transaction, and then
Yes.
it's just it's such a head fuck.
Which I think is why communities usually go down that hole of it's a donation rather than a transaction. If it was a transaction, they would want to implement, some terms of their transaction.
Yeah,
And
you
then-
have to start taking it real seriously and like crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's. Otherwise, it starts getting like a bit messy. Lovely. Well, I think that's more or less all that we've got as far as the monetization goes. If you have anything else to add, viewers as well, feel free to get in contact with us and let us any sort of stories that you've got for monetization of communities. Especially sometimes you'll see communities they'll start off as like a community and then they'll try to sort of become like an org, but it doesn't happen naturally. It's sort of they try to force it. Oh man, those are exciting stories.
Maybe we can do a case study down the track.
Yeah, that might be an episode we'll do a bit later, actually, I think.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. This has been the Community Meta. I've been Morg, and I've been joined by Mighty. We hope that you tune in next time. Please tune in next time. in the interim,
please, so that we can enable ads on the stream and feed our cats.
Our cats are dying.
Our cats are dying, and only you can save them.
In the interim, we hope you find your tribe if you're looking for a new community, and we'll see you next time.
Hey legend, thanks for watching the show. If you want to make sure that you're across all of the Game On Aus content here on YouTube, make sure you click the subscribe button. Likes and comments also help us out in the long run. Cheers, I'll see you on the next one.